Now we're going to break it down with two people who know so much about this case. I'm embarrassed at my lack of knowledge. Let's bring him in right now. We have, to my immediate right, Angela Sandella, and to my less right, but still awesome right, Vivace Maxvictor, which is quite frankly the coolest name I've ever heard. Two things stand out. One, you mentioned it earlier, 3 penthouses. Can you necessarily relate to people talking about these various wealth accoutrements that they have? But two, a relationship that exists like this. So my question for you, in your coaching that you do in your daily life, how you pay your own bills, have you ever seen people like this? And will presumably your clients, which probably are a little bit more down to earth, more normal people than 2 Hollywood celebrities, have they seen it?
Well, I actually coach some of the top real estate brokers in New York.
So you've seen it.
That is normal,
right.
Part of my day. And I do coach a lot of high net worth people. So that is normal and customary for what I'm accustomed to.
So what we're seeing, this is not just these 2 people in this weird Hollywood world. You see crazy stuff, excuse my language, like this all the time.
I think we see crazy stuff at any price point. Right? I don't think crazy stuff is limited to a certain wealth category.
I must be a very boring person.
I think crazy is all over the place. And again, if we go back to domestic violence, it is not limited by finances, by sexual orientation, by race. It impacts all people. So while this case is about 2 celebrities, the same scenario is probably happening all throughout the United States, and that's an important takeaway. I think the money part can get us distracted with the glitz. If we're looking bottom line, was there domestic violence, even though I understand this is a defamation case, was there domestic violence? And domestic violence doesn't not cross borders because there's too much wealth or not enough wealth. It impacts all people.
So what do you make of the strategy on both sides?
So I believe there's been so much social media attention on Camille Vasquez, and I know we were just talking about it, and you have opinions, and she was amazing. It was very intentional for them to put up the second chair, a female, to be interrogating Amber about such a sensitive issue. I think across the board, all sides have done a tremendous job. There are a couple things I would have done differently, but I mean, for the most part, it's difficult to criticize them in such an emotional trial.
Yeah, I know that Angela and I were speaking. I was telling her that I was such a fan of Vasquez. Angela said she felt that Vasquez was coming off aggressive. I felt she was coming off very assertive. And Amber Heard needed someone who was assertive to be able to handle her.
Yeah, so in terms of legal strategy, here is the thing. If the jury believes everything that Johnny had said and believes that everything she is saying is totally false, then that assertiveness comes off as what you want, as an advocate, as a champion for the truth. The problem is that if there is doubt in the jury, it can come across as really as almost like badgering the witness, as making fun of her story. So I'm talking from a juror's perspective. It could be either way based on what their initial inclination is. But for example, we brought up the love journal earlier. And I know it sounds funny, but that was a major part of the testimony yesterday of the cross-examination. And in this love journal, Camille Vasquez is reading off all of Amber's notes. And in there's a couple times where Amber says, "I'm sorry." And Camille almost leads that to be like, "So, aren't you basically saying you're sorry for having abused him?" And that, to me, as a woman who knows how hard it is in general for women to not apologize for everything, like that's almost in the DNA of a lot of women, whether or not we abuse someone. If I say I'm sorry because I'm trying to make a relationship better, that doesn't always mean it's me admitting to abuse. Little things like that, I think if you have doubt, could sway the jury being like, whoa, this woman is getting too aggressive. Maybe she is really a victim. Did you see that at all?
I did see that, but I have to say her assertiveness/aggressiveness, as you viewed it, I think is pertinent and is necessary. For example, what shifted the case for me was the $7 million, where Vasquez was going after and saying, "You said you donated this amount." Amber Heard kept saying over and over and over again, doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, "I donated, I donated, I donated," but then saying she pledged it, she pledged it, she pledged it. Trying to do a play on words between donate and pledge, the jury's going to see right through that. I 100% believe that. It made it very difficult for me to trust pretty much anything else she has to say, to some extent, because that's her credibility. Anyone who says they donated $7 million, I would want to believe that they actually donated the money and not that they pledged it. but where is the $7 million? So that, to me, if Vasquez hadn't gone for her again and again and again and again, till finally Amber Heard admitted, yes, I pledged it, basically, essentially, I pledged it, but I have not donated yet because I was not in the position to do so. If Vasquez had been gentle with her, she wouldn't have been able to do that. Also, I feel that this I pledged it equals I donated it is absolutely absurd. I mean, English is my second language, but I know the difference between those two words. And her trying to gaslight Vasquez was absurd and ridiculous and a poor move. I hope she doesn't try to gaslight Vasquez for the rest of the trial.
Yes, so I would fully agree. You need to be assertive in those situations, and I felt she did a tremendous job there. I was just saying that from the jury's perspective, when you get, though, to this sensitive topic of was that abuse real, you know, generally a softer tone might have been more productive there, but I agree. I think overall she's tremendous. I mean, this is the first major case that she's done, and she did a great job. So.
I think a softer tone, Amber Heard would have railroaded her.
Let's get into that.
But Amber Heard had said that the op-ed was not about Johnny Depp, and it was not about Johnny Depp. It was not about Johnny Depp. And as Vasquez was going for her yesterday over and over and over again, she said, it's not about Johnny Depp. And at one point she said, and I wrote it down, she said, it's not just Johnny, but Johnny's also included. So she admitted that it was actually about Johnny Depp.
Obviously, you are an extremely accomplished woman from a career perspective, but as we've talked about thus far, and I talked about earlier, your domestic violence experience has informed so much of your life, so much of your experience in this life. Seeing those images.
It was heartbreaking. I mean, I felt tears. I was very, very moved. It reminds me of seeing my mother and her clumps of hair being around the house and my clumps of hair. So it's heartbreaking that that could happen to anyone.
So if you're in that jury and you've experienced something, or you've had an experience with somebody who has experienced someone, how are you going to look at that? And
well, that's a pivotal moment.
Right.
So if I were in the jury, I don't believe Amber Heard's testimony because she wasn't credible about the $7 million. And that to me is, there's a saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so if there's deception in that area, I'm wondering where else there's deception in her storytelling. But the pieces of hair and the bruised eyes and everything else that's physical evidence, that's not her storytelling, it's actual physical evidence, that would move me on the jury. And of course, as you see, I'm having an emotional reaction to it now. And I understand why Raquel had such an extreme reaction. You love someone. You don't want them to be in danger, and you don't want the danger to be escalated, that you could lose that person, or some even worse damage could happen, permanent damage could happen to the person that you love. So it's challenging to see those photos of any person, man, woman, or child. And I also want to say domestic violence is happening to so many children. So many children. We need to talk about this.
we are visual people. We need pictures, especially men. I mean, let's be honest, we like visuals. The visuals that were shown today of the bruises, you obviously just sighed right there. They obviously resonated with you.
It's hard to watch. If those images have been untouched, and I'm not saying they have been touched, but if there was no touch up to those, it's absolutely heartbreaking that that could happen to anyone.
I agree, and I think the confirmation that those images were not doctored that we saw in the testimony today by Raquel and also by her ex-partner who then testified after, and seeing in the real moment her saying that, look, I saw Amber and that is exactly what she looked like at that time. That is so powerful. We will remember that. I also think, though, if we're going to talk about visuals, we also have to talk about that knife that was brought up yesterday, because that knife, to me, did make me doubt Amber's credibility a bit.
100%. If someone is afraid of someone else, you certainly don't buy them a weapon. So it's hard to believe that you're afraid of someone. You feel like your life is threatened by this individual's aberrant behavior, especially in a drug-fueled rage, and you're going to buy them a weapon. I'm actually really excited to listen to the rest of the witnesses. To me, Amber Heard, as I've mentioned, was not a credible witness. These other witnesses seem to be much more credible. And so, having been a survivor of domestic violence, I would hate for her not to have the opportunity to get the justice should she deserve it when it comes to domestic violence. So if these other characters, including her sister, can come and give accurate, honest, sincere, authentic testimony that they witnessed altercations between them, then that would be very pivotal to the entire case. And that would be really helpful to the viewers at home who may have a witness to stand up for them when everyone else is disbelieving them. If you're being hurt by someone, please get help. And sometimes when you go to the first person to get help, that person may not be able to help you. It might be a family member, it might be someone who doesn't believe you. And so these other witnesses who can come to corroborate that, if they can, that will be a powerful moment. If they can't, my goal here is for any viewer who has been subjected to domestic violence or is currently living through it to have the courage and the fortitude to stand up and speak their truth and get the help that they need and not be dissuaded by whatever the outcome of this case is.
That's really well said. What do you think about the judge in this case so far?
I like her. I think she's been pretty straight down the line. She's been relatively unemotional. She has been very fact of the matter. And I think when a case has such high emotions like this case, I feel like she's bringing it back down to what it should be, which is about the law.
I find also it's nice to have her there. You feel like she's fair and balanced.
And isn't that interesting? Because we find, at least in our business of the media, when a camera goes in a courtroom, especially on a high-profile case, the judge oftentimes resorts to theatrics of usually his or her own, to try to get all the attention on them for whatever reason, whether they're consciously doing it or not consciously doing it. It seems to happen that way.
She's a confident, secure woman who doesn't need to do that.
Exactly. How one-sided has social media been in favor of Johnny Depp versus the reality of ultimately what's happening in the courtroom from a legal and a messaging perspective?
It's 98% Johnny, I think.
Yes.
I actually did a TikTok video on this, and 98% of people on TikTok who came across my video believed in Team Depp. But here is the problem with social media and with everything in general, is that people are developing a binary opinion. It's either Team Depp or Team Heard. But that's not actually the legal case. So you can still really despise Amber and yet have Johnny lose the case. So there's a legal axis, and then there's a who do you like more axis. On the who do you like more axis, very clearly Johnny is winning. But in the legal axis, I don't think that's the case.
I've been watching a lot of the court on YouTube, and yes, all the comments almost all of them are pro Johnny Depp. But again, this is not a popularity contest. This is not about who do you like more. The game here is to look at, was there defamation? Was there domestic violence? It doesn't matter whether or not you like her. If she's telling the truth, then she deserves justice.
And then we see the lawyers bringing up extremely juicy things like yesterday, going through the love journal and reading out all of the notes that Amber wrote to Johnny. I mean, these are not things that we would ever see in a romantic relationship.
Two questions, one less serious, one more serious.
Sure.
The non-serious question. Is a love journal something that I should be keeping in my private life?
100%.
Is this a thing?
It's a must. It's a must.
Okay.
And make sure you have different colored pens too.
Wow.
Highlights.
I didn't know this
the
was a
highlights.
thing. We have about 30 seconds left. It has been a pleasure being with you two ladies. I'd like to get your quick predictions for what happens when the jury reaches their verdict. Angela, begin with you.
I have been pretty clear that I think he is not going to win his suit. She's also not going to win the counterclaim, but for all effective purposes, that's going to mean that she has won.
Vivace, over to you.
I hope what happens is that there's greater awareness on domestic violence and greater support for women, men, and children who need help.
Thank you so very much for sharing your perspective. Such powerful words coming from you, such beautiful insight coming from you. Angela Candela, you're our attorney extraordinaire. Vivace Maxvictor, you are our life coach extraordinaire. We thank the both of you. I am Todd Pyro.